What happens when the place that built your life simply disappears? Not a company, not a brand, not a logo, a place. A place where you spent almost every day of your adult life. A place where you made friends. A place where you met your wife. A place where you laughed. A place where you worried. A place where you believed you retire. A place that felt permanent. What happens when it's suddenly gone? My dad knew that answer. His name was Joseph, although everybody knew him as John. In 1963, at 16 years old, he left Coleshill and travelled to Longbridge for his first day at work. He couldn't have known then that he would spend the next 42 years there. He couldn't have known that Longbridge would become part of his identity, or that one day he would watch it die. This isn't really a story about cars, it's a story about people. The people who built Britain, and what happened when Britain stopped building. To understand Longbridge, you need to forget everything you see there today. Forget the shops, forget the housing estates, forget the business parks. In 1963, Longbridge was something else entirely. It was one of the largest factories in Europe. A city within a city. A world of steel, noise and movement. Every morning, thousands of workers flooded through the gates. Trains arrived packed. Buses arrived packed. The roads were packed. Workers came from Birmingham, Redditch, Bromsgrove, Droitwich, Pershore, Evesham. Entire communities depended on Longbridge. Entire streets were occupied by Longbridge workers. Entire families relied on Longbridge wages. Fathers worked there, sons followed them, brothers worked together, neighbours travelled together. Sometimes 3 generations of the same family worked behind the same gates. At its peak, Longbridge employed more than 25,000 people. Think about that, 25,000. Not a workforce, that's a town. And every one of those people believed they were building something that would last forever. One former worker later said, Longbridge wasn't where you worked, Longbridge was who you were. Back then, workers rarely said they worked for Austin. They simply said, I work at the Austin. Everybody knew what they meant. The Austin wasn't just a factory, it was an institute. The Mini was becoming a global icon. Cars left Longbridge and travelled all over the world. Workers were proud of what they built, proud of where they worked, proud to be part of something bigger than themselves. Today, we often talk about manufacturing in terms of profits and losses, balance sheets. But workers didn't think that way. Workers thought about mortgages, families, putting food on the table, building a future. Longbridge wasn't just making cars, it was creating lives. And for my dad, that life had only just begun. In 1968, everything changed. The government believed Britain's car industry needed a champion, a giant company capable of taking on the world. So Austin, Morris, MG, Triumph, Jaguar, Rover, and several others were brought together. The result was British Leyland. On paper, it looked unstoppable. A British industrial superpower. A company employed hundreds of thousands. A company capable of dominating world markets. But reality was very different. British Leyland wasn't really one company. It was dozens of companies forced together. Different cultures, different factories, different management teams, different visions. Instead of unity, there was confusion. Instead of cooperation, there was rivalry. Instead of strength, there was chaos. One former manager later admitted, we weren't one company. We were competing tribes. The workers could see it. The cracks were already forming. Today, when people hear British Leyland, they think about strikes, breakdowns, failure. But that's not what workers remember. Workers remember friendships, football teams, Christmas parties, workmates, Friday nights at the pub, the canteen, the laughs, the people. One former employee later said, "The best thing about Longbridge wasn't the cars, it was the people." And that's what makes this story so painful, because factories can be rebuilt, production lines can be replaced, but communities are much harder to recreate. Then there was the Allegro. Perhaps no car became a bigger punchline. My granddad owned one. One day it broke down outside the Longbridge gates, the factory that it was built in. Security told him he needed to move it. My granddad looked at them and said, "You built it, you move it." Eventually a breakdown mechanic arrived. He looked underneath, smiled and said, "Oh, it's that little clip again. Got a million of them in the van." The fault was apparently so common, he carried replacements everywhere. It's funny now, but stories like that slowly damage public confidence. One breakdown, one joke, one disappointed customer at a time. No discussion about British Leyland can avoid Red Robbo. Derek Robertson became the public face of the unions. To some workers, he was a hero. To others, he represented everything that was going wrong. The truth was more complicated. Workers were frightened. Inflation was rising. Jobs felt vulnerable. Families depended on those wages. People weren't striking because they wanted to destroy British Leyland. Most believed they were fighting to save it. Yet somehow, every battle seemed to weaken the company further. One former worker later reflected, "Nobody came to work wanting to damage British Leyland." But damage was happening. And while Britain argued with itself, foreign manufacturers were moving ahead. Toyota, Honda, Volkswagen. They were building reliable cars. Affordable cars, cars customers could trust. British Leyland was fighting yesterday's battles while the future quietly arrived. By the 1980s, hope arrived. The Metro was a success. Honda's partnership improved quality. New Rover models restored confidence, and for a while, it generally felt like Longbridge might survive. This was also when my parents met. Both worked in the finance department. While newspapers focused on profits and losses, life continued. People still fell in love. People still got married. People still built futures. Longbridge wasn't just producing cars, it was producing lives. Thousands of them. In 1989, my dad became stores manager at Northworks. By now, he had spent more than 25 years at Longbridge. A lifetime. Yet none of them knew the biggest battle was still ahead. In 1994, Rover was sold to BMW. At first, workers welcomed the news. BMW had money, BMW had prestige, BMW built some of the world's best cars. Surely this would save Rover. Billions was invested, factories modernised, the beautiful Rover 75 was born. Many people still consider it the finest Rover ever built. Yet behind the scenes, BMW was losing enormous amounts of money. And by 2000, the rumours were everywhere. My dad was worried. Thousands of workers were worried. Nobody knew what was happening, but everyone knew something wasn't right. Imagine spending nearly 40 years somewhere. Imagine building your life around one place. Then imagine hearing whispers that it might disappear. That was the reality facing Longbridge workers. Fear. Pure fear. The final years felt like watching somebody slowly dying. Hope arrived, then vanished. Rescue plans appeared, then collapsed. Promises were made, then broken. Workers carried on regardless. Because that's what workers do. They keep turning up, they keep believing, they keep hope. Until April 2005, when the hope finally ran out. The production lines stopped. The factories fell silent. More than 6,000 workers lost their jobs. But the real impact was much bigger. Suppliers, transport companies, local businesses, entire communities suffered. Some estimates suggest nearly 30,000 jobs were affected. The shock spread across Birmingham and the West Midlands. A century of car production ended almost overnight. This is the part most documentaries ignore, the aftermath. Because redundancy isn't just losing a job, it's losing routine, it's losing purpose, it's losing friends, it's losing identity. My dad found another job, but it wasn't Longbridge, it wasn't home. The place he spent nearly 42 years of his life was gone, and that's something statistics can't measure. One former worker described the closure as like losing a member of the family. Another called it a bereavement, because for many people, that's exactly what it felt like, grief. Today, much of Longbridge has vanished. The production lines are gone, the noise is gone, the industry is gone, and identity is gone. The world my dad walked into in 1963 no longer exists. But every time I see an old Mini, a Rover 214, a Rover Coupe, an MGZR, an MGZS, or an MGZT, I think about the people who built them. People like my dad. Because Longbridge was never really about cars. Cars were simply what the workers happened to build. Longbridge was about people. People who gave decades of their lives to something they believed would always be there. And when Longbridge died, Britain just didn't lose a factory, it lost part of itself. If you or your family worked at Longbridge, Austin, Rover, MG or British Leyland, tell us your story in the comments below. Where did you work? What did you remember? What did Longbridge mean to you? Because buildings can disappear, factories can close, but as long as people keep telling their stories, Longbridge will never truly be gone.